Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls her age. While her classmates spent their afternoons scrolling through social media or hanging out at the mall, she could be found at the local shooting range with her grandfather, a Vietnam War veteran who had taught her everything he knew about marksmanship. At 19, she possessed a natural talent that even seasoned marksmen found remarkable. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton as Sarah stepped out of her grandfather's old pickup truck. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from excitement. Today was the day she had been preparing for her entire life, though she didn't know it yet. She had enlisted in the Marines 6 months ago, and after completing basic training with flying colors, she found herself selected for advanced sniper training. "You sure about this, Mija?" her grandfather asked, his weathered hands gripping the steering wheel. "These boys ain't gonna go easy on you just because you're young." Sarah adjusted her uniform and shouldered her gear bag. "I've been ready for this since I was 12, abuelo." "You made sure of that." The old man smiled, remembering all those Saturday mornings when he had patiently taught his granddaughter the fundamentals of shooting. He had recognized her natural ability early on, the way she could control her breathing, steady her hands, and read wind patterns like they were written in a language only she understood. What he hadn't expected was how quickly she would surpass even his own considerable skills. As Sarah walked toward the training facility, she caught the stares and whispers of other Marines. Most were men in their 20s and 30s, battle-hardened veterans who had seen action in Iraq and Afghanistan. To them, she looked like she should be heading to college orientation, not sniper school. Her baby face and petite frame made her appear even younger than her 19 years, and more than one instructor had done a double take when they saw her name on the roster. The training facility buzzed with activity as over 50 candidates from various military branches gathered for what would be one of the most challenging courses the military had to offer. Marine snipers, Army Rangers, Air Force security forces, and even a few Navy SEALs had come to test their skills and learn from some of the best marksmen in the world. The competition was fierce, and everyone knew that not everyone who started the course would finish it. Sarah found herself assigned to Bravo Squad, a mixed group of 12 candidates that included 2 Navy SEALs who had already completed multiple deployments. Petty Officer First Class Mike "Snake" Rodriguez and Petty Officer Second Class Danny "Ghost" Thompson had volunteered for the advanced training to sharpen their skills before their next deployment. Both men were in their late 20s, with the kind of quiet confidence that came from surviving real combat situations. Well, what do we have here?" Snake said as Sarah approached their group. His tone wasn't hostile, but it carried the skepticism that seemed to follow her everywhere. "You sure you're in the right place, kid?" "Last time I checked, my orders said Bravo Squad," Sarah replied calmly, setting down her gear next to theirs. She had learned early in her military career that the best way to handle doubt was with quiet confidence and letting her actions speak for themselves. Ghost looked her up and down, taking in her young face and small stature. "How old are you anyway? You look like you should be asking me to buy you beer, not carrying a rifle." "Old enough to be here," Sarah said simply. She had dealt with this kind of questioning throughout basic training and had developed a thick skin. What these men didn't know was that she had been shooting competitively since she was 13, had won state championships in high school, and could outshoot most of the men who questioned her abilities. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of their instructor, Gunnery Sergeant Robert Ice McKenna, a legendary Marine sniper who had over 200 confirmed kills during his 3 tours in Afghanistan. McKenna was a man of few words, but when he spoke, everyone listened. His reputation preceded him, and even the experienced SEALs straightened up when he entered the room. "Listen up, ladies and gentlemen," McKenna said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had been tested in the crucible of combat. "For the next 6 weeks, you belong to me. Some of you think you're hot stuff because you've got some confirmed kills or because you graduated top of your sniper course. Let me tell you something, that means exactly nothing here." He paced in front of the group, his steel-gray eyes studying each candidate. When his gaze fell on Sarah, she met it steadily, refusing to look away. McKenna paused for a moment, perhaps surprised by the determination he saw in the young Marine's eyes, before continuing his speech. "This course will push you beyond anything you've experienced before. We're not just teaching you to shoot, we're teaching you to think like a sniper, to become invisible, to make shots that others would consider impossible. Half of you won't make it through the first week. Of those who remain, only a handful will earn the right to call themselves elite marksmen. The first week of training was a blur of physical conditioning, classroom instruction, and basic marksmanship drills. Sarah quickly discovered that despite her years of experience with her grandfather, military sniper training was on an entirely different level. They learned about ballistics, wind reading, range estimation, and camouflage techniques that went far beyond anything she had ever imagined. During the physical training sessions, Sarah's small size actually worked to her advantage. While the larger men struggled with some of the endurance challenges, she moved through obstacle courses with surprising speed and agility. Her years of hiking and camping with her grandfather had given her excellent cardiovascular fitness and mental toughness that served her well during the grueling daily routines. The classroom sessions revealed the scientific precision behind sniper work. Sarah absorbed every lesson eagerly, taking detailed notes on trajectory calculations, environmental factors, and the psychology of long-range shooting. She discovered that being a sniper wasn't just about having a steady hand. It required understanding physics, meteorology, and human behavior in ways that few other military specialties demanded. But it was on the shooting range where Sarah truly began to distinguish herself. During the initial marksmanship assessment, candidates were required to engage targets at distances ranging from 200 to 800 meters using standard military rifles. While most of the experienced soldiers performed adequately, Sarah's shots were consistently grouped so tightly that the range officers had to examine her targets multiple times to verify the results. Snake and Ghost watched in growing amazement as target after target came back with shot groups that would have impressed Olympic marksmen. At 600 meters, Sarah's 5 shots could be covered by a quarter. At 800 meters, her accuracy remained virtually unchanged while other candidates began to struggle with the increased distance and wind conditions. "Beginner's luck," Ghost muttered after Sarah's third perfect score in as many days. But McKenna was paying attention. During his 20-year career, he had trained hundreds of snipers, and he recognized exceptional talent when he saw it. What impressed him most wasn't just Sarah's accuracy. It was her consistency and the calm, methodical way she approached each shot. While other candidates showed signs of stress and fatigue as the training intensified, Sarah seemed to thrive under pressure. The real test came during the 4th day of training, when McKenna announced that they would be conducting their first major evaluation. Each candidate would have to engage targets at various distances while dealing with changing wind conditions and time pressure. The exercise was designed to simulate real combat conditions, where a sniper might have only seconds to acquire a target and take a shot that could mean the difference between mission success and failure. Sarah found herself paired with Snake for the exercise, a partnership that the SEAL had initially objected to, until McKenna made it clear that objections were not welcome. As they moved into position on the range, Snake couldn't help but voice his concerns about being teamed with someone so young and inexperienced. "Look, kid," he said as they settled into their shooting positions, "I know you can shoot pretty targets on a nice controlled range, but this is different. When the pressure's on and the stakes are real, things change. I've seen good shooters fall apart when it matters most." Sarah adjusted her rifle and studied the range through her scope, noting the wind flags and calculating distances to the various targets they would need to engage. "I understand your concerns," she said quietly, "but you might want to reserve judgment until after you see what happens." The exercise began with targets appearing at random intervals at distances ranging from 400 to 1,200 meters. Candidates had to identify military targets while ignoring civilian decoys, calculate firing solutions on the fly, and coordinate with their partners to engage multiple targets simultaneously. The pressure was intense, with instructors shouting commands and creating distractions designed to simulate the chaos of combat. Sarah's first target appeared at 700 meters, a partially concealed figure that was visible for only 15 seconds. Without hesitation, she calculated the wind drift, adjusted for bullet drop, and squeezed the trigger. The target dropped immediately, indicating a clean hit. Her second target came up at 900 meters in a crosswind that had other candidates missing by significant margins. Again, Sarah's shot was perfect. By the end of the exercise, Sarah had engaged 8 targets and scored 8 hits, with 6 of them being precise center mass shots that would have been instantly fatal in a real combat situation. Snake, despite his initial skepticism, had to admit that he had never seen shooting like that from someone so young. Even more impressive was the fact that Sarah had maintained her composure throughout the entire exercise, never showing signs of stress or uncertainty. As the candidates gathered to review their performance, McKenna called out the scores. Most had achieved hit rates between 60 and 70%, which was considered acceptable for this stage of training. The two SEALs had scored 85%, demonstrating the high level of skill that had made them special operations forces. Martinez, McKenna called out, consulting his scorecard with what might have been the slightest hint of surprise in his voice. 100%. 8 targets, 8 hits, 6 of them center mass. The range fell silent. Even the instructors seemed surprised by the announcement. A perfect score on such a challenging exercise was rare even among the most experienced snipers, and to see it from the youngest candidate in the class was unprecedented. Snake looked at Sarah with new respect, while Ghost shook his head in disbelief. "How did you do that?" Ghost asked. "Some of those shots were impossible. That 900-meter target was barely visible, and the wind was gusting like crazy." Sarah shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention, but honest in her response. "My grandfather taught me to read the wind when I was 12. He used to make me practice in all kinds of weather until I could hit targets in conditions that most people wouldn't even try to shoot in. And the distance, well, I've been taking long shots since I was 14. What Sarah didn't mention was the hours upon hours she had spent practicing mental discipline and visualization techniques her grandfather had taught her. The old Marine had understood that precision shooting was as much a mental game as a physical one, and he had trained his granddaughter to maintain perfect focus regardless of external pressures or distractions. As the first week of training concluded, word began to spread throughout the base about the young Marine who was outperforming seasoned combat veterans. Officers who normally paid little attention to training exercises began stopping by the range to watch Sarah shoot. Her instructors started pushing her with increasingly challenging scenarios, trying to find the limits of her abilities. But Sarah seemed to have no limits. Every challenge presented to her was met with the same calm competence that had marked her performance from the beginning. She adapted quickly to new weapon systems, mastered advanced camouflage techniques, and demonstrated an intuitive understanding of fieldcraft that typically took years to develop. The other candidates began to take notice as well. The initial skepticism and condescending attitudes gradually gave way to respect and curiosity. Even the most experienced veterans had to acknowledge that they were witnessing something special. Sarah's age became less relevant as her performance spoke for itself, and soon she was being sought out for advice by teammates who had initially dismissed her as too young and inexperienced. McKenna watched this transformation with professional satisfaction. In his years as an instructor, he had learned to identify the candidates who possessed not just skill, but the rare combination of natural talent, mental toughness, and dedication that marked true elite snipers. Sarah Martinez possessed all of these qualities in abundance, and he began to suspect that she might be capable of achievements that would surprise even him. As the second week of training approached, McKenna made a decision that would change the trajectory of Sarah's military career. He picked up his phone and made a call to his commanding officer, requesting permission to accelerate certain aspects of Sarah's training and to expose her to challenges typically reserved for the most advanced students. Sir, I've got a candidate here who might be something special," he said. "I think we need to find out just how good she really is." The second week of training brought new challenges that would test the candidates in ways they hadn't experienced before. McKenna had received approval from his superiors to implement advanced training scenarios typically reserved for the final weeks of the course. Word had reached the highest levels of command about the young Marine who was consistently outperforming seasoned combat veterans, and there was growing curiosity about just how far her abilities could be pushed. Sarah arrived at the training facility on Monday morning to find that the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Instead of the standard classroom setup, she discovered that the day's activities would take place in a realistic urban environment that had been constructed to simulate the kind of conditions snipers might face in modern warfare. The mock city included multi-story buildings, narrow alleyways, and civilian areas where precision and judgment would be just as important as marksmanship skills. "Today we're going to find out who among you has what it takes to operate in a real-world environment," McKenna announced to the assembled candidates. You'll be working in teams of 2, and your mission is to eliminate high-value targets while avoiding civilian casualties. The scenarios are based on actual operations, and the margin for error is 0. Sarah found herself paired with an Army Ranger named Sergeant First Class James Hawk Patterson, a 30-year-old veteran with 2 combat deployments under his belt. Patterson had initially been skeptical of being paired with the young Marine, but her performance during the first week had earned his respect. He had seen her adapt to every challenge with a calmness and precision that reminded him of the best snipers he had worked with in Afghanistan. "All right, Martinez," Patterson said as they studied their mission briefing. "Looks like we're going after a terrorist cell that's been operating out of this apartment complex. 3 confirmed targets, unknown number of civilians in the area. How do you want to approach this?" Sarah examined the detailed floor plans and photographs of the target area, her mind automatically calculating angles, distances, and potential complications. The primary target has a clear shot from the roof of Building 7, about 400 meters, but look at these windows here. She pointed to several locations on the map. Civilians confirmed in at least 6 units. We'll need to be very careful about backdrop and trajectory. What impressed Patterson was not just Sarah's technical analysis, but her immediate concern for civilian safety. Many young soldiers, eager to prove themselves, focused primarily on completing the mission without fully considering the broader implications of their actions. Sarah's first instinct was to ensure that innocent people wouldn't be harmed, a maturity that was remarkable in someone so young. The urban training environment was incredibly realistic, complete with actors playing civilians and sophisticated target systems that could simulate various scenarios. As Sarah and Patterson moved into position, they encountered challenges that went far beyond simple marksmanship. They had to navigate through crowded streets while remaining undetected, establish firing positions in confined spaces, and make split-second decisions about when to take shots and when to hold fire. Their first target appeared in a 3rd-story window, but Sarah immediately recognized that the angle would send her bullet through a thin wall into an apartment where civilians were known to be located. Instead of taking the shot, she communicated with Patterson to reposition to a different building where the backdrop would be safe. The movement took an additional 15 minutes, during which the target could have potentially escaped, but Sarah's decision proved correct when they established a clean shot with no risk to innocent bystanders. The shot itself was remarkable not just for its accuracy, but for the conditions under which it was taken. Sarah was firing from a prone position on a narrow fire escape, with limited room to maneuver and a strong crosswind that was causing the metal structure to sway slightly. The target was visible for only moments at a time as he moved back and forth in front of the window. When Sarah finally took the shot, it was a perfect center mass hit that would have been instantly fatal in a real situation. "Jesus," Patterson whispered as he watched the target indicator light up, confirming the hit. "That was a hell of a shot. I'm not sure I could have made that one," but Sarah was already analyzing their next objective. The second target was located in a completely different part of the complex, requiring them to move quickly while maintaining operational security. As they made their way through the urban maze, Sarah demonstrated skills that went far beyond marksmanship. She moved with the fluid grace of someone who understood not just how to shoot, but how to think like a sniper. The second engagement proved even more challenging than the first. The target was located on a rooftop, but he was surrounded by what appeared to be civilian workers who were hanging laundry and conducting other routine activities. Sarah and Patterson had to observe the pattern of movement for nearly 30 minutes before identifying a narrow window of opportunity when the target would be isolated from the civilians. When that moment came, Sarah was ready. Her shot covered over 600 meters and had to account for a significant elevation change and swirling winds caused by the urban environment. The bullet struck the target precisely as he stepped away from the group of civilians, eliminating the threat without endangering innocent lives. The third and final target presented the most complex challenge of all. Intelligence indicated that the subject was holding hostages in a small room, and Sarah would need to take a shot that neutralized the threat while ensuring the safety of the captives. The scenario was based on an actual situation that had occurred during urban operations in Iraq, where a sniper's precision had been the difference between saving lives and a tragic outcome. Sarah spent almost an hour studying the target area, using various optical devices to gather intelligence about the layout of the room and the positions of both the threat and the hostages. When she finally identified her shooting position, A narrow window in a building over 800 meters away, Patterson had his doubts about the feasibility of the shot. "That's got to be the smallest target window I've ever seen," he said, studying the situation through his own scope. "You're looking at maybe a 6-inch margin for error, and that's assuming the intelligence about the hostage positions is accurate. My grandfather used to make me practice shots like this when I was 16, she said quietly. He called them guardian angel shots, the kind where you're protecting people who don't even know you're there. The memory of those training sessions flooded back as Sarah prepared for what would be the most challenging shot of her young career. Her grandfather had set up scenarios in the mountains behind their home, where she would have to thread bullets between obstacles to hit targets that were barely visible. At the time, she had thought he was being unnecessarily difficult. Now she understood that he had been preparing her for exactly this kind of situation. When Sarah finally squeezed the trigger, the bullet traveled its 800-meter path with perfect precision, striking the threat in the exact location that would neutralize him instantly while avoiding any risk to the hostages. The training system confirmed not just a hit, but a perfect shot that would have accomplished the mission objective flawlessly. As the exercise concluded, Patterson looked at his young partner with something approaching awe. "In 12 years of military service, I have never seen shooting like that. Where the hell did you learn to do this?" Sarah began breaking down her rifle with practiced efficiency. "My grandfather started teaching me when I was 8 years old. He was a Marine sniper in Vietnam, and he said that if I was going to learn to shoot, I was going to learn to do it right. I spent every weekend for 10 years learning everything he could teach me." What Sarah didn't fully explain was the philosophy behind her grandfather's training methods. The old Marine had survived some of the most difficult fighting of the Vietnam War, and he understood that being a sniper wasn't just about technical skill. It was about making moral decisions under extreme pressure. He had taught Sarah not just how to shoot, but how to think about the responsibility that came with the ability to take life from great distances. Word of Sarah's performance during the urban training exercise spread rapidly throughout the base. Officers who had heard rumors about the young Marine's abilities began requesting detailed reports about her progress. McKenna found himself fielding calls from senior commanders who wanted to understand how someone so young had developed such extraordinary capabilities. The attention created new pressures for Sarah, but she handled them with the same calm competence that she brought to every other challenge. She understood that her age made her an anomaly in the military sniper community, and she was determined to prove that her achievements were based on skill and dedication rather than luck or special treatment. The third week of training introduced advanced stalking exercises where candidates had to move undetected across open terrain to reach positions where they could engage targets without being spotted by counter-snipers. These exercises tested not just marksmanship skills, but the ability to think strategically and move with the patience and discipline that characterized elite snipers. Sarah's small size proved to be a significant advantage during these exercises. While larger candidates struggled to remain concealed in shallow depressions or sparse vegetation, she could disappear into terrain that seemed to offer no concealment at all. Her movements were so careful and deliberate that even experienced instructors had difficulty tracking her progress across the training area. During one particularly challenging exercise, Sarah was tasked with moving 2 kilometers across open desert terrain to reach a shooting position while avoiding detection by a team of counter-snipers equipped with advanced optics and thermal imaging equipment. Most candidates took 4 to 6 hours to complete the movement, with many being detected and eliminated before reaching their objective. Sarah completed the movement in 3.5 hours and was never detected, despite passing within 50 meters of 2 different counter-sniper positions. When she finally revealed her location by taking her assigned shot, a perfect hit on a target over 1,000 meters away, the instructors had to replay thermal recordings to track her movement path. Even with the benefit of recorded data, they found it difficult to identify exactly how she had managed to remain undetected for the entire exercise. "That was like watching a ghost," commented Master Sergeant Williams, one of the counter-sniper instructors. "I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never seen movement skills like that from someone so young. Hell, I've never seen movement skills like that from anyone." As the training progressed into its 4th week, McKenna made another unprecedented decision. He contacted the Naval Special Warfare Command and requested permission to have some of their most experienced SEAL snipers visit the training facility to observe Sarah's performance and provide their assessment of her capabilities. The request was unusual enough that it reached the desk of Captain Robert Dutch Schultz, the commanding officer of SEAL Team 3, one of the Navy's most elite special operations units. Schultz had spent his entire career working with the best snipers the military had to offer, and he was skeptical about reports of a 19-year-old Marine who was supposedly outperforming seasoned combat veterans. "McKenna's got a good reputation," Schultz told his operations officer. "But this sounds like someone's been drinking too much coffee and reading too many comic books. Still, if he's asking for our people to take a look, it might be worth checking out. Send Rodriguez and Thompson. They're due back from deployment next week anyway." Chief Petty Officer Miguel Rodriguez and Petty Officer First Class David Thompson were among the most experienced snipers in naval special warfare. Between them, they had over 40 confirmed kills and had operated in some of the most challenging environments on Earth. They had trained with elite units from around the world and had developed a reputation for being able to make shots that others considered impossible. When they arrived at Camp Pendleton, they expected to spend a few hours observing a promising young Marine and then return to their base with a polite assessment that she showed potential but needed more experience. What they actually witnessed challenged their understanding of what was possible in the field of precision marksmanship. McKenna had arranged a demonstration that would showcase not just Sarah's shooting ability, but her overall capabilities as a sniper. The exercise involved multiple targets at various distances, changing weather conditions and time pressure that simulated real combat situations. Sarah would be shooting alone, without a spotter, and would need to calculate all firing solutions and make all decisions independently. Rodriguez and Thompson positioned themselves where they could observe both Sarah's shooting position and the targets she would be engaging. They had their own high-powered optics and range-finding equipment, allowing them to independently verify the conditions and difficulty of each shot. The first target appeared at 600 meters in a light crosswind. Sarah engaged it within 15 seconds of it becoming visible, scoring a perfect center mass hit. The second target was at 900 meters in gustier conditions, and again, she achieved a perfect hit. As the exercise progressed, the targets became increasingly challenging. Longer distances, smaller target areas, more difficult environmental conditions. By the time Sarah engaged her final target, a 1,200-meter shot in swirling winds that required her to calculate a complex trajectory around intervening obstacles, both SEALs were leaning forward in concentration, trying to understand how she was consistently achieving what they would have considered lucky shots if they had managed them even once. "That's not possible," Thompson muttered as Sarah's final shot struck home with perfect precision. "Nobody shoots like that. Nobody." Rodriguez was studying Sarah through his binoculars, trying to detect some sign of the stress or fatigue that should have been affecting her performance after such a demanding exercise. Instead, he saw a young woman who appeared as calm and focused as she had been when the exercise began, methodically cleaning her rifle with the same careful attention to detail that had characterized every aspect of her performance. When McKenna introduced the SEALs to Sarah after the demonstration, they found themselves in the unusual position of being genuinely impressed by someone less than half their age with no combat experience. Their questions revealed their professional curiosity about how such skills had been developed, and their respect was evident in the way they spoke with her. "How long have you been shooting?" Rodriguez asked. "Since I was 8, Sarah replied simply. "My grandfather was a Marine sniper in Vietnam. He taught me everything." "Your grandfather must have been one hell of a teacher," Thompson said. "I've been doing this for 12 years, and I've never seen consistency like that." "How often do you practice?" "Every day when I was growing up. My grandfather made sure I understood that being good with a rifle was a responsibility, not just a skill. He taught me that if I was going to shoot, I needed to be perfect every time, because in the real world, there are no second chances." The conversation that followed revealed the depth of Sarah's understanding of sniper operations. She could discuss advanced ballistics calculations, environmental factors, and tactical considerations with the same expertise that the experienced SEALs possessed. More importantly, she demonstrated the kind of mature judgment about the use of lethal force that typically developed only after years of experience in combat situations. As Rodriguez and Thompson prepared to return to their base, they found themselves in the unprecedented position of reporting back to their commanding officer that they had witnessed something truly exceptional. Their assessment would set in motion events that would change the trajectory of Sarah's military career in ways that none of them could have anticipated. The report that Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez and Petty Officer Thompson submitted to Captain Schultz was unlike anything that had crossed his desk in 25 years of naval service. The two seasoned snipers, known for their professional skepticism and measured assessments, had written what could only be described as a glowing evaluation of a 19-year-old Marine they had observed for less than 4 hours. Recommend immediate consideration for advanced training programs, the report concluded. Subject demonstrates capabilities that exceed those of most combat-experienced snipers. Natural talent combined with exceptional training foundation suggests potential for operational employment at highest levels. Schultz read the report twice before picking up his phone. He had known both Rodriguez and Thompson for years, and neither man was given to exaggeration or hyperbole. If they were recommending that the Navy take a serious look at a Marine sniper, there had to be something truly extraordinary about her capabilities.
"McKenna," Schultz said when the Marine instructor answered his phone, "I just got a report from my people about this Martinez kid.
They seem to think she's some kind of prodigy. What's your professional assessment?" McKenna had been expecting this call. "Sir, in 20 years of training snipers, I've never encountered anyone like her. Her technical skills are obviously exceptional, but what really sets her apart is her judgment and maturity. She makes decisions like someone with years of combat experience, but she's never been deployed. I think she could be ready for operational employment much sooner than normal." The conversation that followed would have significant implications for Sarah's career. Within the tight-knit community of military snipers, word was spreading about the young Marine who was consistently outperforming seasoned combat veterans. Senior officers were beginning to take notice, and discussions were starting about how to best utilize someone with such exceptional abilities. Meanwhile, Sarah was unaware of the high-level attention her performance was generating. She continued to approach each day of training with the same focused determination that had characterized her performance from the beginning. If anything, the increasing difficulty of the exercises only seemed to bring out the best in her abilities. The 5th week of training introduced night operations and the use of advanced optical equipment. Working in darkness presented entirely new challenges, requiring snipers to operate with limited visibility while maintaining the same precision they demonstrated during daylight hours. Night vision equipment helped, but it also created its own limitations and complications. Sarah adapted to night operations with the same natural ability she had shown in every other aspect of sniper training. Her first night exercise required her to engage targets at various distances, using only starlight and ambient illumination from a nearby city. While other candidates struggled with the reduced visibility and unfamiliar equipment, Sarah's shots remained consistently accurate. "How is she doing that?" asked Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, a senior Marine officer who had come to observe the night training. "Those are incredibly difficult conditions, and she's shooting like it's broad daylight." McKenna had been wondering the same thing. I asked her about it after her first night exercise. Apparently, her grandfather used to take her hunting in the mountains of Colorado where her family lived. She learned to shoot in all kinds of lighting conditions, including situations where most people wouldn't even attempt to take a shot. What McKenna didn't know was the full extent of Sarah's childhood training. Her grandfather had been obsessive about teaching her to operate in low-light conditions, understanding that many military operations took place during hours of darkness. He had spent countless nights teaching her to read terrain, identify targets, and make precise shots using minimal artificial illumination. The training had included exercises that seemed almost impossible at the time. Sarah remembered nights when her grandfather had required her to identify and engage targets, using only the light from stars, teaching her to use every available photon to create the mental picture she needed to make accurate shots. At the time, she had thought he was being unreasonably demanding. Now she understood that he had been preparing her for exactly the kind of situations she was encountering in military training. As the night exercises progressed, Sarah's performance continued to impress both her instructors and fellow candidates. During one particularly challenging scenario, She was required to engage multiple targets from a concealed position while avoiding detection by enemy forces equipped with thermal imaging equipment. The exercise was designed to simulate the kind of complex night operations that Special Forces units might encounter in hostile territory. Sarah not only completed the exercise successfully, but she did so in a way that demonstrated tactical thinking beyond her years. Instead of engaging the targets in the order they appeared, she analyzed the overall situation and determined that eliminating them in a different sequence would prevent the enemy forces from discovering her location. Her decision proved correct when the exercise concluded with her position still undetected and all objectives completed successfully. "That wasn't just good shooting," observed Major Patricia Wells, an intelligence officer who was evaluating the tactical aspects of the training. "That was strategic thinking at a level you'd expect from someone with significant combat experience." She understood the bigger picture and adapted her approach accordingly. The night training also revealed another aspect of Sarah's exceptional abilities. During a complex stalking exercise conducted in complete darkness, she demonstrated movement skills that seemed almost supernatural. Using only natural navigation techniques and an intuitive understanding of terrain, she moved over 2 miles through challenging desert landscape without using any artificial illumination or electronic navigation aids. When she reached her objective, a firing position that offered a clear shot at a target over 1,000 meters away, she had arrived 15 minutes ahead of schedule and had never been detected by the counter-surveillance team that was actively hunting for candidates attempting the movement. Her final shot, taken in conditions so dark that the instructors could barely see the target through their night vision equipment, was a perfect hit. The success of the night operations training led to another unprecedented decision. McKenna received authorization to conduct a joint training exercise with actual special operations units that were preparing for deployment. Sarah would be integrated into a SEAL team for a week-long advanced training scenario that would test her abilities under the most realistic conditions possible short of actual combat. The announcement created considerable buzz throughout the training facility. Joint exercises between different military branches were relatively common, but having a student participate in special operations training was virtually unheard of. The fact that the student was a 19-year-old Marine who had never been deployed made the situation even more remarkable. Sarah learned about the joint exercise on a Friday afternoon when McKenna called her into his office. The news was both exciting and intimidating. She would be working with some of the most elite soldiers in the military, men who had proven themselves in combat situations around the world. "This is an opportunity that very few people get," McKenna told her. "The SEAL team you'll be working with has just returned from a deployment in Afghanistan, and they're preparing for another mission. They've specifically requested to work with you based on the reports they've received about your capabilities." The SEAL team Sarah would be joining was led by Lieutenant Commander Jake Viper Morrison, a highly decorated officer with 3 combat deployments and a reputation for leading some of the most successful special operations missions of the past decade. Morrison had initially been skeptical about having a student join his team for advanced training, but the reports he had received about Sarah's abilities had convinced him that the exercise might benefit both his team and the young Marine. "I've read your file," Morrison told Sarah when they met on Monday morning. "And I have to admit, I'm curious to see if you're as good as everyone says you are. My team operates in situations where there's no margin for error, and every person has to be able to perform at the highest level. If you can't keep up, we'll know pretty quickly." The week-long exercise took place in a remote training area that had been set up to simulate conditions in Afghanistan. The scenario involved multiple objectives spread across mountainous terrain, with Sarah's role being to provide precision fire support for the SEAL team as they conducted various operations. The training was as realistic as possible, with role players acting as enemy forces and sophisticated simulation equipment that could replicate the stress and confusion of actual combat. Sarah's first operation with the SEAL team was a simulated hostage rescue in a compound located in a valley surrounded by steep hills. Her job was to establish an overwatch position on one of the ridgelines and provide covering fire for the assault team as they approached the target building. The position required a difficult climb in full gear, followed by precise shooting at distances exceeding 1,000 meters. As the team prepared for the operation, Sarah found herself working closely with the SEAL team's designated marksman. Petty Officer First Class Kevin Reaper Davis, a veteran sniper with over 50 confirmed kills from 2 combat deployments. Davis had been openly skeptical about working with someone so young and inexperienced, but he approached the partnership with professional respect for the reports he had received about her abilities. "The thing about this kind of operation," Davis explained as they studied the terrain, "is that everything depends on timing and coordination. The assault team is counting on us to eliminate specific threats at exactly the right moment. If we're early, we compromise their approach. If we're late, they could walk into an ambush." Sarah nodded, understanding the complexity of the coordination required. "What's our primary concern about the shooting conditions?" Davis appreciated the fact that she was asking the right questions. "Wind is going to be tricky in that valley. It'll be swirling and changing direction constantly because of the terrain. Plus, we'll be shooting downhill at a steep angle, which affects trajectory calculations." The operation began before dawn, with Sarah and Davis making their way to the overwatch position while the assault team moved into their staging area. The climb was challenging, requiring them to navigate steep, rocky terrain while carrying full combat loads that included their rifles, ammunition, communications equipment, and other gear necessary for the mission. Sarah's physical conditioning proved more than adequate for the demanding movement. Despite carrying nearly 60 pounds of equipment, she kept pace with Davis throughout the climb and arrived at the firing position without showing signs of fatigue. More importantly, she had maintained situational awareness throughout the movement, noting terrain features and potential alternative positions that might be needed if circumstances changed. The overwatch position offered an excellent view of the target compound, but the shooting conditions were every bit as challenging as Davis had predicted. Swirling winds in the valley were causing flags and vegetation to move in different directions simultaneously, and the angle of the shots would require complex calculations to ensure accuracy. "Range to the primary target building is 1,100 meters, Davis reported, studying the compound through his high-powered scope. "I'm seeing wind flags indicating gusts up to 15 miles per hour, but the direction keeps shifting." Sarah was conducting her own assessment of the conditions, using techniques her grandfather had taught her for reading wind in complex terrain. "The primary wind is coming from the northwest at about 12 miles per hour, but there are deflections off the ridgelines creating microclimates in different parts of the valley. I think we need to adjust for each target individually, rather than using a standard calculation." Davis looked at her with surprise. Reading wind in mountainous terrain was one of the most difficult aspects of long-range shooting, requiring experience and intuition that typically took years to develop. The fact that Sarah could analyze the conditions so quickly and accurately suggested a level of expertise that went far beyond her chronological age. As the assault team reached their final approach position, Sarah and Davis received their target assignments through their radio communications. Sarah would be responsible for eliminating 2 sentries on the roof of the main building, while Davis would handle threats that might appear in windows or other positions around the compound. The targets Sarah had been assigned were particularly challenging because they were moving unpredictably around the rooftop, making range estimation and timing critical factors in the engagement. She would need to time her shots perfectly to ensure that both targets were eliminated simultaneously, preventing either one from alerting other enemy forces in the compound. "Assault team in position," came the voice of Lieutenant Commander Morrison over their radios. "Overwatch, report status." "Overwatch ready," Davis responded. "Martinez, are you set on your targets?" Sarah had been tracking the movement patterns of her assigned targets, noting that they followed a rough routine that brought them to predictable positions every few minutes. "Targets acquired. I can take both shots within a 15-second window when they move to the northwest corner of the building. On my mark." Davis was also tracking his targets, waiting for the optimal moment to begin the engagement. "Execute in 3, 2, 1. Execute." Sarah's first shot traveled the 1,100-meter distance and struck the first target precisely as he reached the predetermined position. Her second shot, taken exactly 6 seconds later, eliminated the second target just as he turned to investigate the sound of his partner collapsing. Both shots were perfect, neutralizing the threats without alerting the other enemy forces in the compound. The assault team's approach continued without detection, and the simulated hostage rescue concluded successfully with all objectives met and no friendly casualties. As the team conducted their after-action review, Morrison found himself genuinely impressed by the coordination and precision that Sarah had demonstrated during her first operation with his unit. "Outstanding work up there," Morrison told Sarah as the team prepared to return to base. "Those were difficult shots under challenging conditions, and your timing was perfect. How did you know they would move to that position when they did?" "I watched them for about 20 minutes before the operation started," Sarah explained. "They had a routine they were following, checking different sectors of their perimeter on a regular schedule. Once I figured out the pattern, it was just a matter of waiting for the right moment." What impressed Morrison wasn't just the technical aspect of Sarah's performance, but the tactical thinking she had demonstrated. Understanding enemy behavior patterns and using that knowledge to plan engagement sequences was the kind of skill that typically developed only after extensive combat experience. To see it from someone who had never been deployed suggested a natural aptitude for special operations work that was truly exceptional. The successful completion of the first joint operation led to increasingly complex scenarios throughout the week. Each exercise presented new challenges that tested different aspects of Sarah's abilities, from urban environments to desert conditions to maritime operations conducted from naval vessels. In every case, she adapted quickly and performed at a level that earned the respect of the experienced special operations personnel she was working with. By the end of the week, Sarah had become an integral part of the SEAL team's operations, with the other team members relying on her capabilities as much as they would any veteran member of their unit. The transformation from skeptical acceptance to genuine respect had been remarkable to witness, and it spoke to both Sarah's abilities and her character. "I've got to admit," Davis told Morrison as they prepared their final assessment, "I was wrong about her. Age doesn't mean anything when someone can perform like that. She's better than most of the snipers I've worked with, and I've worked with some really good ones." Morrison nodded in agreement. "I'm going to recommend her for immediate consideration for special operations training. Someone with her capabilities shouldn't be wasted on standard infantry operations. We need to get her into a program where she can be properly utilized." The recommendation would reach the highest levels of military command, setting in motion a series of events that would challenge traditional notions about military training and career development. Sarah Martinez was about to become the center of discussions that would change how the military identified and developed exceptional talent. The recommendation from Lieutenant Commander Morrison traveled through military channels with unprecedented speed, reaching the Pentagon within 72 hours of the joint training exercise's conclusion. For the first time in decades, senior military officials found themselves confronted with documentation of capabilities that challenged their understanding of how talent developed within the sniper community. General Patricia Hayes, the Marine Corps' Deputy Commandant for Combat Development, had seen many exceptional young Marines during her 30-year career, but the reports crossing her desk about Sarah Martinez were unlike anything she had encountered before. Multiple independent assessments from different military branches all reached the same conclusion. They were dealing with someone whose abilities transcended normal training and experience parameters. "This is either the most remarkable case of natural talent we've ever documented, or there's something we don't understand about her background and training," General Hayes told Colonel Michael Stone Roberts during a classified briefing at Marine Corps headquarters. "Either way, we need to determine how to best utilize someone with these capabilities." Colonel Roberts had been tasked with conducting a comprehensive review of Sarah's case, examining everything from her family background to her training history to the documented results of her military performance. What he discovered was a story that revealed as much about the importance of mentorship and dedication as it did about natural ability. Her grandfather, Eduardo Martinez, was a Marine sniper in Vietnam, with 43 confirmed kills, Roberts reported. After the war, he became obsessed with preserving and passing on the knowledge he had gained. When his granddaughter showed an interest in shooting, he essentially created a private training program that lasted over 10 years. The scope of Eduardo Martinez's training program was remarkable. Using his military pension and savings from a successful construction business, he had created a private shooting facility on his property in Colorado that rivaled many military training installations. The facility included ranges extending to 1,500 meters, urban training scenarios, and environmental chambers that could simulate various weather conditions. "It wasn't just about shooting," Roberts continued. Martinez taught his granddaughter everything he knew about tactics, fieldcraft, physical conditioning, and mental preparation. She received the equivalent of advanced military training from age 8 to 18, customized for her individual development and abilities. But even accounting for exceptional training, Sarah's documented performance exceeded what military experts believed possible for someone her age. Her consistency, decision-making abilities, and tactical awareness suggested capabilities that typically required years of combat experience to develop. Military psychologists who reviewed her case files speculated that she possessed a rare combination of natural talent, comprehensive training, and psychological makeup that created optimal conditions for developing elite-level skills. The discussions about Sarah's future reached the highest levels of military command. Secretary of Defense Robert Mitchell found himself reviewing classified assessments that recommended fast-tracking a 19-year-old Marine through programs typically reserved for the most experienced special operations personnel. The precedent such a decision would establish could have far-reaching implications for military training and career development. What are the risks of accelerating someone this young through advanced programs? Secretary Mitchell asked during a briefing with senior military leaders. Are we potentially setting her up for failure by advancing her too quickly? General Hayes had anticipated this question. The psychological evaluations indicate that she possesses the mental maturity and emotional stability necessary for advanced operations. Her performance under stress has been consistently exceptional, and she demonstrates judgment that would be remarkable in someone twice her age. The conversation that followed would reshape Sarah's military career and establish new protocols for identifying and developing exceptional talent within the military. After extensive discussion and review, a decision was made to offer Sarah an opportunity that had never been presented to someone so young. Immediate entry into a classified training program designed for the military's most elite snipers. Meanwhile, Sarah was completing her final weeks at the Marine Sniper School. Unaware that her future was being decided in Washington, she continued to approach each training day with the same focused determination that had characterized her performance from the beginning, consistently outperforming candidates with significantly more experience and maturity. The final exercise of the course was designed to test everything the candidates had learned over the previous 8 weeks. Each sniper would operate independently for 72 hours, conducting multiple missions across varied terrain, while being hunted by a highly trained counter-surveillance team. Success required not just marksmanship skills, but advanced fieldcraft, tactical thinking, and physical endurance. Sarah's performance during the final exercise exceeded even the high expectations that her instructors had developed over the course of her training. Operating alone in mountainous terrain, she completed 6 different missions while successfully evading detection by a team specifically trained to hunt snipers. Her shots during the exercise ranged from 400 to 1,400 meters, with environmental conditions that included high winds, rain, and limited visibility. On the second day of the exercise, Sarah encountered a scenario that tested her judgment as much as her shooting skills. She discovered that one of her assigned targets was located in an area where civilians were also present, requiring her to make a decision about whether to take the shot or abort the mission. After careful observation and analysis, she determined that the shot could be taken safely and eliminated the target with perfect precision, demonstrating the kind of mature decision-making that impressed even her most experienced instructors. "I've been running this final exercise for 8 years, McKenna told Colonel Roberts, who had come to observe Sarah's performance. "I've never seen anyone complete it with the level of success she's achieving. Most candidates struggle just to complete half the missions while avoiding detection. She's completing all of them and making it look easy." The final mission of the exercise presented Sarah with the most challenging shot of her entire training experience. The target was located at a distance of 1,600 meters, with complex terrain features that created multiple wind patterns and a required trajectory that had to account for significant elevation changes. Weather conditions included gusting winds and intermittent precipitation that further complicated the shooting environment. Sarah spent 4 hours conducting reconnaissance and calculating firing solutions before determining that the shot was feasible. When she finally squeezed the trigger, the bullet followed a perfect trajectory that accounted for all environmental factors and struck the target with deadly precision. The shot was so remarkable that the range safety officers had to verify the target multiple times to confirm the hit. "That shot should have been impossible," commented Master Sergeant Williams, who had observed thousands of training exercises during his career. The conditions, the distance, the complexity of the calculations required. I wouldn't have attempted it myself, and I've been doing this for 20 years. As Sarah's training at the Marine Sniper School concluded, she had achieved something unprecedented in the program's history. Not only had she graduated with the highest scores ever recorded, but she had done so while consistently outperforming candidates with years more experience and military service. Her instructors agreed unanimously that she represented a new standard for what was possible in sniper training and development. The graduation ceremony was attended by senior officers from multiple military branches, who had come specifically to meet the young Marine whose performance had generated so much attention throughout the military sniper community. Among them was Brigadier General David Hawk Peterson, commander of Marine Special Operations Command, who had a special interest in identifying and recruiting exceptional talent for the Corps' most elite units. Marine Martinez, General Peterson said as he presented Sarah with her graduation certificate, "Your performance during this training has been nothing short of extraordinary. You've demonstrated capabilities that suggest you're ready for assignments typically reserved for the most experienced snipers in our inventory." After the formal ceremony concluded, General Peterson asked to speak with Sarah privately. The conversation that followed would present her with an opportunity that would test her abilities at the highest levels of military operations. "I'm authorized to offer you immediate entry into a classified training program," Peterson explained. "This program is designed for snipers who will be supporting our most sensitive operations, and acceptance means you'll be working with targets and in environments that few people ever encounter. Are you interested in that kind of assignment?" Sarah had dreamed of such opportunities since deciding to join the Marines, but the reality of being offered advanced training so early in her career was both exciting and intimidating. "Sir, I'm honored by the opportunity. What would the training involve? I can't give you all the details here, but I can tell you that it would involve working with our most advanced weapons systems, operating in hostile environments around the world, and supporting operations that require the highest levels of precision and discretion. The failure rate for this program is over 50%, and most of the people who attempt it have years of combat experience." The offer represented everything Sarah had been working toward, but it also meant leaving behind the conventional military career path that most Marines followed. She would be entering a world where operations were classified at the highest levels and where the margin for error was essentially zero. "I understand the risks, sir," Sarah said after considering the implications. "My grandfather always taught me that with exceptional abilities comes exceptional responsibility. I think I'm ready for that." General Peterson smiled, recognizing the mature response that had impressed everyone who had worked with Sarah during her training. "Report to Marine Special Operations Command next Monday. Your advanced training begins immediately." As Sarah prepared to leave Camp Pendleton, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. 8 weeks earlier, she had been just another young Marine starting sniper training. Now she was being invited to join the most elite community of marksmen in the military, with opportunities that she had never imagined possible. The phone call she made to her grandfather that evening was filled with excitement and gratitude. Eduardo Martinez listened with pride as his granddaughter described the opportunities that lay ahead, knowing that the countless hours of training and mentorship had prepared her for exactly this kind of challenge. "Remember, mija," he said before ending the call, "being able to shoot is just the beginning. The real test is how you use that ability to serve others and protect the innocent. That's what makes a sniper truly elite." Sarah carried those words with her as she prepared for the next phase of her military career, understanding that her journey from a curious 8-year-old learning to shoot in the Colorado mountains to an elite military sniper was just beginning. The most challenging and important tests of her abilities still lay ahead, in places and situations that would push her skills to their absolute limits. The invitation to join Marine Special Operations Command represented validation of everything she had worked toward. But it also marked the beginning of a new chapter, where her performance would have real-world consequences that extended far beyond training exercises and qualification scores. She was about to enter a realm where her abilities would be tested not just against targets and timers, but against enemies who were equally trained and equally determined to complete their missions. As she packed her belongings and prepared to report to her new assignment, Sarah understood that she was crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. She was about to become one of the military's most elite warriors, with all the responsibilities and challenges that such a position entailed. The teenage girl who had first picked up a rifle in her grandfather's backyard was about to become a guardian whose precision and judgment could influence events that shaped the world. The Teen Sniper Story, Part 5. The classified facility where Sarah reported for her advanced training was unlike anything she had experienced during her time in the conventional military. Located in a remote area of North Carolina, the installation was designed specifically for preparing personnel for the most sensitive operations conducted by U.S. participants, the Special Forces. Security was unprecedented, with multiple checkpoints and background verification procedures that took nearly 2 hours to complete. Sarah found herself among 12 other candidates selected for the program, all of whom possessed exceptional qualifications and combat experience that dwarfed her own resume. The group included Navy SEALs with multiple deployments, Army Rangers who had served in the most dangerous areas of Afghanistan and Iraq, and Marine snipers with confirmed kills in active combat zones. At 19, she was younger than any of them by at least 6 years, a fact that was immediately obvious to everyone involved. "This should be interesting," commented Sergeant Major James Reaper Davidson, an Army Special Forces veteran with over 15 years of combat experience, as he studied the young Marine who had somehow earned a place in the military's most exclusive sniper program. "I've heard stories about you, Martinez. Hope they're true, because this isn't going to be anything like the training you've done before." The program director was Colonel Sarah Venom Black, a legendary figure in the special operations community who had personally conducted over 200 high-value target eliminations during her career. Colonel Black had initially objected to including someone so young and inexperienced in the program, but the overwhelming endorsements from multiple senior commanders had convinced her to give Sarah an opportunity to prove herself. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colonel Black announced to the assembled candidates, "you are here because you represent the absolute pinnacle of sniper capabilities within the U.S. military. This program will push you beyond anything you have experienced before, and I guarantee that not all of you will complete it successfully." The first week of training introduced Sarah to weapons systems and technologies that were classified at the highest levels of military security. Advanced rifle platforms with computerized firing control systems, ammunition designed for specific mission requirements, and optical equipment that could function in environmental conditions ranging from Arctic cold to desert heat. Each system required extensive training to master, and the margin for error was essentially zero. Sarah's technical aptitude quickly became apparent as she adapted to the advanced equipment with surprising speed. Her years of experience with her grandfather had given her an intuitive understanding of how different variables affected projectile flight, and she was able to apply that knowledge to the sophisticated systems she was now learning to operate. "She's a natural with the advanced platforms," reported Chief Warrant Officer Marcus "Ghost" Thompson, the program's senior technical instructor. "Most candidates need weeks to become proficient with these systems." She was hitting targets at maximum range on her second day. But technical proficiency was only one aspect of the training. The program also included extensive instruction on target identification, rules of engagement, and the legal and ethical framework governing the use of lethal force in various operational environments. These subjects required mature judgment and moral reasoning that typically developed only after years of military service and real-world experience. During one particularly challenging ethics scenario, Sarah was presented with a situation where her assigned target was located near a school where children were present. The exercise was designed to test decision-making under pressure and the ability to balance mission requirements against potential civilian casualties. After careful analysis, Sarah made the decision to abort the mission rather than risk harm to innocent people, demonstrating the kind of moral courage that impressed even her most experienced instructors. "That was the right call," Colonel Black told Sarah during the debrief session. "Too many people get focused on completing the mission and lose sight of the bigger picture. A sniper who can't make those kinds of moral judgments has no place in this community." The second week of training took place in realistic environments that simulated actual operational conditions. Sarah found herself working in urban settings, mountainous terrain, maritime environments, and desert conditions that tested every aspect of her training and abilities. Each scenario was based on actual operations, with complexities and complications that reflected the unpredictable nature of real-world missions. During a particularly challenging urban exercise, Sarah was tasked with eliminating a high-value target while operating from a concealed position in a densely populated city environment. The target was located in a building surrounded by civilians, and the shot would need to be taken through a narrow window at a distance of over 800 meters. Environmental factors included wind patterns created by surrounding buildings and the need to remain undetected by counter-surveillance teams. Sarah spent 6 hours conducting reconnaissance and planning her approach before determining that the mission could be completed safely. When she finally took the shot, it was executed with perfect precision, eliminating the target without any risk to nearby civilians. The accuracy and judgment she demonstrated during the exercise impressed even Colonel Black, who had personally conducted similar operations in combat situations. "That was textbook precision," Black observed as they reviewed the exercise. "The patience you showed, the attention to detail, the perfect execution. That's exactly what we need in operational environments." As the training progressed, Sarah's reputation within the program continued to grow. Her fellow candidates, initially skeptical about working with someone so young, gradually developed genuine respect for her abilities and judgment. More importantly, they began to trust her in situations where their lives might depend on her performance. "Age doesn't matter when someone can shoot like that," said Master Sergeant Rodriguez, a Marine sniper with 12 years of combat experience. "I'd rather have her watching my back than most of the people I've worked with over the years." The 4th week of training introduced Sarah to international operations and the complexities of working in foreign countries with different legal systems and cultural considerations. She learned about diplomatic protocols, intelligence gathering techniques, and the coordination required between military and civilian agencies during sensitive operations. These aspects of the training revealed another dimension of Sarah's capabilities. Her natural intelligence and ability to analyze complex situations made her particularly well-suited for operations that required not just precision shooting, but strategic thinking and cultural awareness. She demonstrated an intuitive understanding of how military actions could have political and diplomatic consequences that extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. During a simulated operation in a hostile foreign country, Sarah was required to work with local allies while maintaining operational security and avoiding detection by enemy forces. The exercise tested her ability to adapt to unfamiliar cultural contexts while maintaining focus on mission objectives. Her performance demonstrated maturity and judgment that surprised even her instructors. "She's got the kind of strategic thinking we need for our most complex operations," reported Major Patricia Wells, the program's intelligence specialist. "Most people focus on the technical aspects of sniping, but she understands how each shot fits into a larger operational and political context." The final week of training culminated in a comprehensive exercise that tested everything the candidates had learned during their time in the program. Each sniper was assigned a complex mission that required multiple target engagements over several days while operating independently in hostile territory. Success required not just exceptional marksmanship, but advanced fieldcraft, tactical planning, and decision-making under extreme pressure. Sarah's final mission took her to a mountainous region where she had to eliminate 3 high-value targets located in different areas while avoiding detection by a sophisticated enemy security network. The terrain was challenging, with extreme elevation changes and weather conditions that included high winds and intermittent precipitation. Each target engagement required different tactical approaches and shooting solutions. The first target was located in a fortified compound at a distance of 1,200 meters. Sarah spent 18 hours conducting surveillance and planning her approach before identifying a shooting position that offered both a clear shot and adequate concealment. When she finally engaged the target, the shot was taken during a brief window when weather conditions were optimal, demonstrating the patience and timing that characterized elite sniper operations. Her second target required a completely different approach. Located in an urban environment, the target could only be engaged during specific time periods, when his routine brought him to a position that offered a clear shot. Sarah had to remain concealed in a hostile city for over 36 hours while waiting for the optimal engagement opportunity. When that moment came, She executed the shot perfectly despite challenging environmental conditions and the presence of civilians in the area. The final target presented Sarah with the most complex challenge of her training. Located in a remote mountain facility, the target was protected by multiple layers of security and could only be approached through terrain that offered minimal concealment. Sarah had to use all of her fieldcraft skills to reach a shooting position over 2 kilometers from the target, then execute a shot that required complex ballistic calculations to account for extreme range, elevation, and environmental factors. When Sarah squeezed the trigger on that final shot, she was attempting something that few snipers in the world would have considered possible. The bullet traveled over 2 kilometers through challenging environmental conditions and struck the target with perfect precision, completing her mission and demonstrating capabilities that exceeded even the high expectations of her instructors. In 25 years of special operations, I have never seen performance like that from anyone, let alone someone her age, Colonel Black said during the final evaluation session. She has demonstrated capabilities that place her among the most elite snipers in the world. The graduation ceremony was attended by senior military officials from multiple agencies, including representatives from organizations whose existence was classified at the highest levels of government. Sarah had not only completed the most challenging sniper training program in the military, but she had done so with performance scores that exceeded those of candidates, with years more experience in combat service. As Colonel Black presented Sarah with her graduation certificate, she also delivered news that would define the next phase of her career. Marine Martinez, based on your exceptional performance during this training, you are being assigned to a classified operational unit that conducts the most sensitive missions in our inventory. Your abilities are needed in places and situations that I cannot discuss here. The assignment represented the culmination of Sarah's journey from a curious child learning to shoot in her grandfather's backyard to one of the military's most elite snipers. But it also marked the beginning of a new chapter, where her skills would be tested in real operational environments, with consequences that could influence events on a global scale. As Sarah prepared to report to her new unit, she understood that she was about to enter a realm where her abilities would be put to the ultimate test. The training exercises and simulations were over. Now her precision and judgment would be evaluated in situations where lives hung in the balance and where failure was not an option. The phone call she made to her grandfather that evening was brief but meaningful. Eduardo Martinez listened with pride as his granddaughter described her graduation and new assignment, understanding that the years of training and mentorship had prepared her for exactly this kind of responsibility. "Remember what I taught you about being a guardian," he said before ending the call. "You have been given exceptional abilities, but they come with the responsibility to use them in service of others. That's what makes a sniper truly elite, not just the ability to shoot, but the wisdom to know when and why to use that ability." Sarah carried those words with her as she prepared for her new assignment, understanding that she was about to become part of a community that operated in the shadows, protecting others through precision and dedication that few people would ever fully understand. The journey from a 19-year-old Marine to one of the military's most elite snipers was complete, but the most important work of her career was just beginning. In the years that would follow, Sarah Martinez would participate in operations that remained classified at the highest levels of government, using her exceptional abilities to protect American interests and innocent lives around the world. Her story would become legend within the special operations community, inspiring a new generation of snipers and changing how the military identified and developed exceptional talent. But perhaps most importantly, she would fulfill the promise her grandfather had seen in a curious 8-year-old girl who had asked to learn how to shoot. Through dedication, training, and an unwavering commitment to serving others, Sarah had become exactly what Eduardo Martinez had hoped she would become, a guardian whose precision and judgment made the world a safer place for those who could not protect themselves.